Today on the WEInvested podcast, we have Johnny Wolff, and he is the founder and CEO of HomeRoom Co-Living. Johnny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Wesley. Really nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here
Yes,
today.
sir. Thank you so much for joining us. And when I was able to read through your bio and read through your history, I just thought you had a really interesting history. And I think you have a great business, that you're the CEO and founder of now. So it's something I'm excited to talk about and learn more about.
Awesome, man. Yeah, excited to share about it. Excited to have the conversation about entrepreneurship.
Yes, sir, for sure. So I just kind of want to start from the top, man, and start it from the beginning. I know you've kind of lived all over the place, but can you talk a little bit about, where exactly you grew up?
Sure. So I was born and raised, or born on the Central Coast, California, San Luis Obispo. Raised in the Sacramento area, Roseville. Gets really hot in the summer. Uh, yeah, grew up there. Went to school back at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. Spent about a decade in the Silicon Valley in my career, and then traveled kind of the nation doing real estate investing, and eventually started this company, HomeRoom.
Nah, man, that's super dope. And so, how would you say your upbringing or what about your upbringing, I guess, impacted your outlook on life?
Hmm. Um, I think the biggest thing that my parents were. I'm one of the lucky to have really phenomenal and supportive parents. My dad actually started a company when he was in his 50s, which is a technology software company in his 50s. So in terms of like a role model, like I got a amazing role model, in my life, which is very rare, and I'm super grateful for that. That would, I would say, the big one. The kind of another influence, and it's not. Maybe it actually happened a little later in my life. I always did little league. I broke the record for little league candy bar sales. Had like my own little businesses growing up, so I always had entrepreneurship um, as something that I did. But it wasn't until I started to have some pretty decent medical issues, or not decent, but I had some medical issues that kind of have plagued me over the last decade. And I think in a way, like the challenges that those presented to me kind of snapped me out of sort of a bit of a simple suburban life, kind of forced me to fight a little bit harder, dig a little bit deeper. And so I think, I don't know, challenges, if you're ready for them and you can kind of overcome them, kind of can be a teacher in a way that a lot of other things can't be. Obviously, I'm not discrediting people that have kind of taught me things, but I think learning requires you to be really hungry to make those changes. And a good way to be really hungry to get better is if like you don't have enough money to pay for your medical bills, kind of thing. And so I feel like that taught me to be hungry, and then the hunger kind of led to me learning pretty rapidly in a lot of other areas. So
For sure. So would you say that, you kind of always been curious? It sounds like, you know, the life situations that you've gone through have kind of put that hunger and drive in you, but is curiosity a thing that you always had?
I mean, honestly, a bit, but not really. I think I've become more curious as a necessity because I had goals. I set goals. There's people I admire that are around me that I look at them. Mike Tick, or Tish, he's our marketing co-founder of our company. The dude is constantly curious. He like is always exploring, can't stop. Um, he was actually 30. He was on the 30 under 30 recently. So the dude he's a brilliant guy. Um, but for me to learn, I have to have a reason. And so you can either be naturally curious like Mike, or you can be driven to accomplish certain things like me. And then inevitably, I am forced to learn at a rapid pace to achieve like big goals that I've set for myself. So, it's really about knowing yourself and figuring out like what's the character stick or the situation you have to put yourself into to force the rapid learning. Or if you're naturally curious, how do you, just put yourself towards the right direction? So definitely wish I was a bit more curious naturally, but I found that it doesn't matter if I can put myself in situations where I have to learn kind of to survive.
For sure, for sure. And having that self-awareness to be able to understand like your strengths and your weaknesses and where you thrive at, I feel like that's superpower in his own right, just to really be able to know yourself and know what you can and can't do, and
Hmm.
how you thrive the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of in like it's there's that Pixar animated short where the old guy's like playing chess against himself. Have you ever seen that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think, motivation for learning, growth, drive. Some people have those naturally, and you'll run into those people, and you're like, "Holy crap! How are they so driven? Why do they always have energy? Why are they able to accomplish so much?" And you can kind of see it in them. They just naturally will do that, no matter where they are in anything they do. I'm not one of those guys, right? I have to figure out a way to play chess against myself to get myself in a position where I know it'll draw out the best in me, because that might just be enough. So yeah, so I think it is really important to be aware that you're kind of playing, you have to optimize a situation that'll draw out your best self, essentially.
For sure, for sure. So, let's just kind of hop over to the business side, man, and talk about this interesting company that you have. So, what is Homeroom Co-Living?
Sure. So we're a residential marketplace that helps simplify real estate investing for out of state investors. And then we offer a streamlined rental process for tenants. And our unique lens on that is that we do roommate housing or co-living, where roommates rent individual bedrooms in a house, and the common areas are furnished, and there's community and amenities provided.
No, man, and it seems like you guys are solving um, multiple problems for different people. So from the people that need somewhere to stay, that need housing, as well as helping out investors and people that may have interest in doing real estate but may not necessarily want to get their hands dirty.
Yeah, yeah, and those are both problems that I personally had um, in the Bay Area. I started investing in real estate out of state in 2008, about a year out of college, and the experience was good, but it was uneven. It seemed inflexible. I had a property manager, but like if I wanted to go to a different city, because in my case, I was investing in oil country, and I was like, I don't know if oil is going to be a good place to be invested in like 10 years. So maybe I should diversify, but that wasn't an option because they were just in that one area. So, I've been kind of building this frustration. Led me to move to Austin in 2015 to buy real estate myself because I couldn't. And so then as we started realizing roommate housing was a really good product in terms of returns, um, offering it to people nationwide seemed like the right move. And that's really what we're trying to do for investors is you can buy a co-living home or a single family home with HomeRoom anywhere in the nation.
For sure. So it sounds like this company and this idea is something that slowly developed over time. Was it something that you thought about for a while? Is it something that you noticed instantly? Like, how did that go for you?
Yeah, it was definitely not instant. It was, I lived with, I invested since in 2007. I moved out of my college roommate house into a young professional roommate situation. We ran the house as adults. I lived like that in the Bay Area for 8 years before I moved to Austin and started to buy property and rent out rooms, basically using a lot of what I had learned from that roommate experience. So then, it's kind of these two paths that I was taking. Is like living as a roommate, always kind of not liking finding roommates on Craigslist, but also continuing to invest in real estate, spending my, after hours doing analysis on different real estate options and modeling returns. And so those two kind of came together, and it took I think it took a little bit over a decade, frankly. Um, so yeah, it was kind of a slow build. Once we started the company though, and it's come together relatively quickly since kind of inception.
For sure, for sure. And that's always that magic number that I hear, when I'm reading and when I talk to different people. It's like they put 10 years of work into an idea or into a craft before it kind of really pays off and they see those dividends. And I'm hearing the same thing with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I spent 10 years learning about roommate housing, 10 years learning about real estate investing, and now I'm in year three of a company that does that. So probably got 7 more years of that side of things. So all in it will be 20, which is a good chunk of time, all said and done.
For sure, for sure. So what would you say kind of got you started in real estate? What sparked that interest for you
Yeah,
in
I
being
don't
an
know.
investor?
Yeah, I mean, I took a real estate and investing class in college. It's kind of my first exposure to it. There was a friend of the family he ran a turnkey real estate operation out of Texas, and so that's where I invested. You know, so really it was just like an opportunity presented itself. It seemed that was back in the day when you could put 10% down for investment properties, and I got paid a bonus, and I just kind of decided to do it. So there wasn't really like a big moment where I thought this was going to be a life changing thing, but it ended up being a big kind of revelation for me.
For sure, for sure. And so, you mentioned earlier that you spent a lot of your career just starting out in San Francisco, and you were a financial analyst in Silicon Valley. So, how would you say that your career before Homeroom Co-Living helped to benefit your current company and benefit what you're doing now?
Yeah, and this is where I kind of differ, I think, from someone like Gary Vaynerchuk or anyone that says like, "Hey, go start a company right out of school." I think, or when you're really really young, I don't disagree with that, but I do think you have a pretty big disadvantage if you haven't worked in a great company before. There's simple things that we're able to do pretty fluidly, like how do you structure your company, how do you manage teams, how do you do HR, how do you raise capital. These are all things that I learned at big companies in Silicon Valley and startups, and it's been insanely hard. But if I didn't have that experience, there's zero chance that we would have any success. A lot of our competitors really struggled at a model that was pretty similar, and a lot of the CEOs of those companies had less experience in a company than I did. They had less real estate experience, and they had less experience working in companies. And so I think those two things like are why we continue to have a really nice trajectory in our growth. So I'd highly recommend working at great companies where you get, Goldman, Google. These, if you can, the best company you can work for, even if it's less money, if you learn a lot and you're around great people, will just bring you to a different level than you generally can on your own, I think.
For sure. No, that makes a total sense. So, is there any one thing or one aspect of business that stood out to you that you feel like was like one of the most valuable things that you learned from working for a great company?
Yeah, and when I was at Electronic Arts, the CFO there of our label, Eric Garay, is just first of all just a phenomenal human being. One of those rare people that he was like he sang in like a barbershop quartet. He played, I think, college sports, and he was also just really nice and really smart. And he did software, development a bit. So he was just like an amazing dude. But one of the things that he did, he was patient when he hired, super patient. He was thorough and he was patient. And the team that we had was the best team I've ever been on. And it never got worse. It just kept kind of getting better. And so, I mean, Eric had mishires for sure, but that team was nails. It's the best team. It's so functional. Everyone had equal skills. Everyone moved really, really fast. And it was because, he wouldn't compromise on when he'd hire. One time it took us 7 months to hire an analyst, which is not a super high level position. And it was super frustrating. But then we got the person, they were amazing, and it changed everything. And so that's something I worked on in myself and on my team. I think if you can take the time to figure out how to hire really, really well, you build a team that's powerful and flexible. Great people can get sideswiped a lot more and have a shot to come back, whereas like really good people, it's a lot harder. So if you get we definitely put a premium on really really top end people for our team at Homeroom today, and I think Eric really helped me with that.
For sure, for sure. And so, I feel like most people would feel like, oh man, I have a great job. I'm comfortable here. The culture is amazing. My boss is super cool, and I'm working on cool things all day. I feel like a lot of people would get comfortable and not want to leave that situation because that's pretty rare to find. But what prompted you to move? What let you know, like, okay, it's time for me to move on and do my own thing?
Yeah, and I hear different versions of the story, and I think every one of them is great. Like some people like can't, they need to be their own boss immediately, and they drop out of college to do it. The great entrepreneurs, a lot of them did that, right? you know um but in my case, it was like I didn't really want to start a company because I had watched, um, I had seen people start companies and get absolutely clobbered for like a decade, and I was like, I don't want any part of that, um, you know. And but then I just realized that this issue of like housing for young adults was not getting solved, and I kept watching. I'd watched it for like a decade, and like zero progress. The only progress we had seen for roommate housing from when I started doing it in 2007 to 2018, when I had started HomeRoom, was that you could now do Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace to talk to creepy people about renting a room, like, and you're like, okay, at this rate, it's gonna be like 2070 before there's any kind of option that makes sense for roommates. And there's 26 million of these people living like this, and every roommate app sucks and is failing. So I was just like, all right, I think I know how to do this. I'm gonna take a run at it. And yeah, I felt like I needed to solve the problem. I didn't want to solve a problem that I liked. I didn't want to start a business because I wanted to start a business. I just kind of got hit with a problem that I felt like compelled to solve. So yeah, so that's my story. I kind of was a reluctant entrepreneur. I kind of, in some ways still am. But here we are, and it's going well.
For sure, man. That's awesome. And I feel like that's the heart of what an entrepreneur is, just solving problems with people and recognizing those problems and finding ways to solve them. But
True.
we mentioned earlier that, or I guess we mentioned this before we started recording, but you lived in Silicon Valley, or you lived in San Francisco. You moved to Austin, Texas, and now Kansas City. So, what did you learn from moving to these different parts of the country and being in experiencing these different cultures and just meeting different people? What did you learn from those experiences?
It's a good question. And traveling in the United States is not like traveling internationally. People aren't that different in these different parts of the country, but there are some key differences. One is, there's a reason that cities like San Francisco are super expensive, right? They're the most talented. It has the most densely talented population I've ever experienced. You'll go to a bar, you'll run into like a venture capitalist, a senior software developer, a software designer, and then like an executive from like a company that everyone's heard of. And everyone, even if the young folks are just bright as hell. Austin, it felt like people are young, vibrant, traveling, seeing the world, which I thought was really beautiful, in great shape. It was fun, a lot of fun. People value fun in Austin. And in Kansas City, I think the value was family, stability, and kind of keeping things, I guess Kansas City really felt like the Midwest stereotype to me in a lot of ways, like a little bit slower, not a lot changes. And most people that lived in Kansas City were from Kansas City. So just definitely different strengths and dynamics that I think are good fits for people. And I guess I would say, a lot of people move to new cities because it matches their identity better. I think that's a great thing to do. I think I think a lot of people get rooted to like a tree to where they kind of grew up. I think if you want to be a brilliant innovator, you don't have to, there's no requirement you live anywhere, but sure would be a lot easier, I think, to do that in a city like San Francisco, a city like Austin, where you're going to run into a lot of these people organically. You can do it online almost as efficiently today, so it's not as big of a deal. But I do think you'll be motivated by the people around you. There's that, that saying where it's like you're like the 5 people that you talk to the most. I think there's something to be said for you become like the city that you inhabit in some ways. It's very difficult to be out of shape when you live in San Diego, right? Because you would be the only one. But that's in Kansas City, it's very difficult to be kind of like snippy and kind of impolite because you would be the only one. So I think that's it's an important thing. And I think move if you don't think the city is helping your vibe, does not helping you grow, then go somewhere else that will.
Nah, man, I think that's great advice. And I can like attest to that 1000%, man. Just by moving to different cities and different places, it really does help expand your mind and like look at things differently and see things differently. And you get the chance to uh take bits and pieces from every city with you and kind of apply the coolest things and see how it can help benefit your life.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think you can also see things where like, I didn't like that. I don't want to do that. That's not who I want to be. Right. And so, but yeah, each city has like unique identity that you can learn from as a whole, and people that are, different than you'll find elsewhere. You're not going to find a lot of people from Kansas City in LA. Just not that many people move out of that area. So, yeah, I think it's good to explore and kind of connect with different parts of the world for sure.
So, how do you identify properties that will have above average returns?
So we cheat. That's I mean, we cheat by renting out by the room, right? So we're able to increase rent on a property by 50 to 100% by renting out by the room. So suddenly most properties work for us. And so that ends up being our advantage, that we can arbitrage a property and make it worth a lot more. We do use data analytics. We have data scientists on staff that actually create data modeling to find neighborhoods that we think will have outsized appreciation versus other neighborhoods, as well as kind of safety scores, tenant scores, all this. So we are a bit more advanced there than I think your average turnkey company would be as well. But really, at the end of the day, when you take the rent from 1,800 to 3,000 or something, you can almost just take any house, and that's not what we do. We are very selective, but that one piece alone solves a multitude of sins if we fail elsewhere.
For sure, for sure. No, that's definitely a great way to approach it, and it's really it's really a genius way to do it, man. Like you said, it's a great way to beat that kind of system, you know. But
Definitely.
40 or 50 years ago, the generations before us weren't living like this. They weren't focused on moving around and going different places. They would like have one home, stay there forever, and that's it. So,
Hmm.
what do you think the future of co-living looks like? Is this a trend that'll continue? Do you think it'll die out and go back to how it was? What are your thoughts on that and the trends of co-living?
Yeah, I think you asked about co-living, and I'll go into that too. But I think it's living just more holistically. I think is changing. I think we are seeing the emergence of the sharing economy kind of touch living. I think the massive apartment building that you sign a 12-month lease and you can never get out ever, and you have to furnish your own area, common areas, and moving is a huge chore. I think that's going to fade over the next 10 years. I think people don't care about owning stuff anymore. They want to be able to move. They want flexibility. They value that over ownership of possessions. And what we do at HomeRoom is we furnish the common areas. So you move in on day one, you can watch the TV, you can make yourself some coffee. You can, and then you have to you can actually we can actually get you furniture for your bedroom too, so it's instant. Um, and then you can actually transfer from Austin to Kansas City or vice versa with the push of a button. And as we grow and the network expands to all the major cities in the United States, that means you can move a lot. Your job moves from Atlanta to Charlotte, you hit a button in the HomeRoom app and you move. And so that's what I think is the power of this model, is what Airbnb did for traveling short term. I see HomeRoom and other players in this space doing for living longer term. We definitely like as humans to be stable and stay in a place for a while. But when you're really young, I mean, wouldn't it be cool if you could see every city? If you have a digital nomad job or a job that's flexible and where you work, make new friends instantly because your roommates, they live in that. You have a community online and offline in the new city the second you get there. So that's the vision we have for it, is like community, super affordable, it's flexible, it's furnished, so you don't have to travel with a U-Haul, and you can just kind of live and experience different parts of the United States and eventually the world.
Nah, man, and I think that's super dope because you guys are tackling like the minute things that people don't necessarily think about or account for when they're moving. Because I know when I
Hmm.
move to new places, sometimes I would have to wait on the bed or I have to wait for my TV to get there, and that would
Sure.
be like the worst. You know what I'm saying? Because then you have to go get a sleeping bag and sleep in that. So it's like you guys are like tackling the problems that people may not necessarily think about when they're thinking about I just want to move and go to this new city.
Right. And in addition to that, I mean, so we fine tune every aspect, right? So behind me, this beautiful home, I'm actually not here, it's a Zoom background, is one of the homeroom co-living houses. And it's way better design than my house because we have professional designers that do it, right? We have really cool smart home technology because we have really cool tech guys that do it. So like you can actually like soup up a house, and make it as, you can maximize how awesome it is if you're like really methodical about it. And most people, when they move to their own spot, they can't be as meticulous or intentional about it as we are because they just don't have the practice and the resources. So in a way, we think it, just allows you to live better, faster, and then more beautifully.
For sure, man. It's like you guys have automated or finding ways to automate the moving process, man. And I think it's dope because that just shows the innovation that you guys have in this space. So, for someone that might be interested um, in homeroom co-living or interested in investing, you know, how can someone invest with homeroom and what type of returns can they expect?
Yeah. So to invest with HomeRoom, you would reach out to us at livehomeroom.com/invest, schedule a call with one of our team members. It's pretty quick, 25 minutes. They go through real estate investing kind of basics. We educate our investors. A lot of people will have wanted to invest for years, but haven't had a great option. So we'll help those folks. The other piece is kind of talking about co-living and why the trend is continuing and has staying power. And then on the second call, we'll actually go through the actual numbers pretty in detail. So you'll know what to expect when we see properties. You're going to need about 100 grand, give or take, between 50 and 100 grand to buy a co-living property and set it up. But then the returns will be around 25%. If you invest 100 grand, we expect your investment net worth to be 125,000 by the end of the first year. And then each year after that would kind of grow at that 25% rate.
Man, that's awesome. A 25% ROI. That's like, beating the stock market
Yeah.
easily, you
Yeah,
know?
by a good amount. It's not as volatile either, right? It's
For
more
sure.
stable. So
For sure, man. That's awesome. And so, one thing that you talked about a little earlier was the culture and the team that you had at your, throughout your career. But, one
mhm.
thing I wanted to ask you is that what's the importance of having a team and how did you focus on building yours?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, really depends on what you want to do, right? So there's definitely um options where it's like I have my best friend, probably the best man at my wedding, runs he sells education for private pilots essentially. And he makes a good amount of money a month, tens of thousands. He's the only guy. He doesn't outsource anything, and the gross margin is just pure. Nothing goes to anybody else. So I mean, that's a path. It took him 10 years to get to that, right? But and that works. It's simple. But I want to house hundreds of thousands of people. So for me, that wasn't an option. There was no chance I could reach kind of that goal with by myself, although I did try. Um, so building the team, we actually tried unsuccessfully for a year to figure out hiring really well. I think it was a bit more than a year. And then eventually it kind of clicked. Just take more time, dig deeper, 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 do skills test with your employees before they get hired, and then keep your standards relentlessly high. And so that formula has worked for us over the last year and a half. I guess we're a bit over a year. We've just been on a hiring tear where we just continue to hire super high quality people, and our employee base went from I think about 7 to 40, and
Wow.
the team is really really strong. So I think it's a lot of it's grit and not giving up, aided by some some of the principles that I learned when I was working with Eric about just, being patient and essentially finally saying, okay, Eric, you were right the whole time. And yeah, and then and our team is nails. It's really, really good. And you just can't skimp on it. It takes way more time. It's way more painful than you think. But if you have great people, the difference in what you'll be able to do with that team is like 10x of a decent or good team. So
For sure, man. And so as the CEO and the founder, the more employees you hire, is it your goal to kind of back away from it and I don't want to say like have a veil between you and your employees, but do you want them to know you and have like a personal relationship with you, or would you rather have that space uh between you and your employees? How do you like? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think honestly that really just depends on the size of your company. I think it depends on how fast you're building something. The first 10 employees and I were, the senior employees we had last year, and we spent a lot of time together. We talked about some personal stuff. I don't think it's ever good to have like a veil. But at this point with 45 people, like, honestly, like as a CEO, you have the exact same amount of hours as anybody else. So if you start to like give time away to let, it erodes really, really fast. So you have to be very intentional about where you spend your time. And so that ends up usually going to the people that report to me directly. I have 7 folks that report to me directly, and then the folks below them, I spend time whenever I can, but it's pretty minimal. And it's just, you just can't have relationships with, 45 people at once that are significant, unfortunately.
For sure. So, how would you define success as an entrepreneur?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I would define it as, I think, finding a real problem that people need solved, and then doing your best to solve it in a way in which all the stakeholders benefit a lot. I think you see, I think that was one of the things that I saw at EA, was that they had great margins. So the employees and the shareholders and I guess it's debatable if Madden's good, but the users, the customers really benefit. Everyone benefited. And then I saw other companies where the margins were really tight, and then the customers are kind of happy, and then the employees are not really happy, and then the shareholders are kind of not that happy. So I think it's really that's the issue. Is like you could solve the problem, but everyone would be kind of annoyed by the solution. And so I think a successful entrepreneur figures out a solution that makes everyone really happy. And that's ultra hard, and only like a few people really have ever done that. But to me, that's the pinnacle of success. It's not if like the CEO just them make a lot of money. It's if there's like you've created a flywheel that spits off just positive things to the world on all sides.
For sure, for sure. And so, what would you say is the most important reason for your success?
I don't know if I'd say that we're a success yet. I mean, we're growing really fast, but I don't know if we can declare victory quite yet. But I guess success to date, which I think, yeah, we definitely have had, is I don't know, just commitment to kind of just be as just gritty as as hell. I think aligning with your strengths, because you're going to need every advantage you can get. So I aligned with finance, which is my strength, real estate, which was my strength, and operations and kind of technology partnerships, all things that I had kind of experience with and had done well with in the past. So if you have every strength possible and then you go play the right sport, you have a way better chance of being an all-star. And so I think it would be kind of a shame if like a 7-footer decide to become like a wrestler or something like that. Just like go play basketball, man. So I think that's really crucially important, is like where are your strengths, go play that sport. It's also real crucial that you kind of love that sport too. But it might be more crucial that you have success. I think that 7-footer getting pinned every time, he may love wrestling, but he won't love it for very long. So I just think that you got to align with every strength you have, every advantage you have, and then just drive for it as freaking hard as you can, and don't give up when you get to almost to the end. That's where you have to like really double down and finish. So
How would you like for people to remember you and your company?
the company that solved housing for millennials and Gen Z. I want us to be that company.
So what does the future of HomeRoom co-living look like to you?
I'd like to be in 750 cities in the United States in the next 3 to 5 years. I'd like to be starting to grow internationally, partnering with some of the best institutional funds in the world, to deploy houses that use this model, and like to be seen as a story that's very similar to Airbnb in 10 years.
Sometimes when I ask that question, people generally give a more general answer to that. But the answer you just gave me was very specific, very spot on. You knew you wanted to be in 750 cities. Um, it makes me believe that you're a planner. You write out your goals and you know your goals. Is that true? And how did you come to that number or that conclusion or to that? How did you formulate that or come up with that idea or that thought?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, once again, putting myself in a position where I'm forced to do something that maybe I wouldn't naturally do. Um, I'm forced to do that kind of thing because we pitched to real estate, because we pitched to venture capital funds and angel investors. And so we do research about how do we present the company, where we're going to go. They all want a 7-year plan. They all want a 7-year plan. And I've done that for other companies too. And I've always been a financial forecaster, but it's really kind of, is it more valuable for me to be the guy that's just like, I want to be in 750 cities because I'm just a very visionary guy, or is it more valuable for me to realize if I do the numbers right, 750 is the right number, and 750 cities can support this? So yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of a little bit of what I said before. I put myself I wanted to do VC fundraising. They require this. That forced me into an exercise where we started to do this kind of planning. And so we came away with that number, which is every city in the United States with over 50,000 people in it. We think Coliving can work. So that's really our target. And we actually don't even, we did the research. We actually don't even tell VCs that usually. It's just kind of in my head. So
Why should a new entrepreneur, a new business owner learn about venture capitalists, angel investors? Why is it important for them to know about that side of the business?
yeah, it really depends on, what path you want to take, right? So once again, there's no wrong path. Even not doing a business is not a wrong path, but it's a very wrong path for a lot of people. So if you should do a business, and you better do one, otherwise I think you're gonna really regret it. Just like I would have if I didn't start this. But my buddy Nate, he put no money in. He got no investors. He has no employees. He makes like $250,000 a year in pure profit. He's pretty happy. He's doing all right. But if you want to make $1 billion company in 10 years, that's the VC route. So do you want to make $1 billion company? Do you want to make that big of an impact on the world? Do you have this strength inside of yourself to like endure that? Because it will feel like getting consistently hit in the face with a baseball bat. And so if you want that, then that you have to learn about VC and angels. There's no way to scale that fast and that far without raising a lot of money. There are a few anomalies out there, like I guess MailChimp made it to $1 billion over 20 years without raising any money. So good for them. But that's not typically the story of the unicorn startup. So it's really up to your vision size. You can do a sole proprietorship. You can sell bootstraps. Highly recommend that, actually, by the way, if you're happy with where that would take you. If you think you're solving enough of the problem that you'd be satisfied, it's a much better route. VCs are not your friend. Angel investors are not really your friend either, although they're pretty friendly typically. They're trying to get you to grow as fast as you can, pump you full of steroids like people, they fill chickens with like the salt water. That's what they're trying to do to your company. So they're not really aligned with you. They want you to go big or die. And so it's good to figure that out as soon as possible. So you realize that you're kind of shaking hands with who you're shaking hands with, right? The people that are trying to get big returns fast. And, that's their job. They're not bad people, but that's what they promise their investors. So, yeah, I think it's important to understand that people talk about there's so much money out there to get to invest in companies right now. There's a lot more than there has been historically, but still 99.5% of companies are not going to be able to raise VC money. 99.3% won't be able to raise angel money. So if you're not going big, those aren't really options, but it doesn't mean you can't build an amazing business. So, but if you want to go that route, you're going to have to, there's a lot of things you're going to have to do really, really right. So that's, it's a rare path. And I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs talking about VC funding and angel funding, like that's accessible to most. It's not. It's super rare. And you have to be like not an A student, but like an A+ student, right? So yeah. So if you want to do that, you have to decide and you have to really go after it. If you do not decide and really go after it, then you'll be going down the bootstraps route, which I think is fine. I think there's a lot of, but it's just not easy. Even if you want to do VC funding angel route, you may not be able to do it, even if you do everything you can and you do a lot of things right. So I think it's important to learn about. I think it's important to have a realistic perspective though, and say, is this company really a top 0.1% company, a 1 in 1,000 company? Because if it's only 1 in 10, you probably won't be able to raise.
And so what is your idea? What is your opinion of a top 1% company? Is it a company that's solving a problem that's not being solved or that's not being looked at, or is it a company that's super innovative and bringing something to the table that nobody's done, whether it's technology or whatever? What is your thoughts on 1% company, 0.01% company?
Yeah, 1 in 1,000 company. I mean, you check every box, right? So the size of the addressable market is massive. Usually they're going to look for 10 billion plus, right? How big is this? Is your team like blue chip, pure, right? Stanford software engineers are helpful. Former entrepreneurs are helpful. People that worked at Facebook and Google are all helpful. Is the CEO the perfect fit for the space, right? Do they know it better than most anyone else? Does the company have traction, product? Are they getting close to product market fit where it's like, this could blow up and become the next big thing? All that stuff, right? And to get even to that point took us 3 years, right? We're just starting to talk to VCs. And this year we grew 500%. So it's just the bar is really high. I know there's a lot of money out there, but most of it goes to the same 0.5% it always has gone to. It's just bigger checks than before.
Johnny Wolff, thank you so much for your time today, man. I've learned a lot from this. Very, very valuable information, man. But before I let you go, I want to ask you 3 questions. At the end of every podcast, we play a rapid fire question game. So if you're willing to play, I'll go ahead and ask.
I'm willing to play. Let's go. Let's do it.
Question number 1. Where's your favorite place to travel?
My favorite place to travel with friends is Paris. If it's to a beach, it's Rio. And then if it's my family, it's Cabo.
Bro, that's the dopest thing I ever heard. You just dropped 3 different spots, 3 different reasons. Nah, that's fire. All right, look, man. Question number 2.
Thanks.
What song represents your life the most?
I think I don't know. Actually, I don't think I have one. But the song that Eminem sings in 8 Mile, that's one I've been listening to a lot lately. We had a hell of a tough quarter, and I listen to that every morning when I go to the gym. What's that song called again? Crap.
Lose Yourself?
Yeah, Lose Yourself. Lose Yourself's been helping me a little bit lately. So maybe it's my current representative song. So
that's dope. All right, and
Yeah.
final question, man. What's an amazing thing that you did that no one was around to see?
Yeah, and this one I tell people about, so I guess people understand, or people have heard about this maybe a little bit, but at the end of we started the company, kind of September 2018. And then for 2019, we had me and one other guy, director of operations. So we had one employee. And then at the end of 2019, he got a DUI and then got in trouble. Like basically he was done. So I ran the company with, we had some help, part-time remote help, but I ran the company for 4 months completely by myself. And was also trying to hire another person, which hiring is tough, and you have to train that person. So, running a company like that by myself was, there was no one else there to see me doing it. So it was freaking hard. So, yeah.
Man, that's super dope. Johnny, thank you so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm rooting for you, man, and I'm gonna be watching what you're doing for sure.
Thanks, Wesley. Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.